Chapter 39. Recognizing each other without seeing. Alfonso, King of Aragon, believed he did not know sorrow. Yet seeing the bridge from the hill, moisture blurred his eyes. If I had died, the memory of my father would be an unhealed wound. They had reached the edge of time. Below, the bandits were already biting steel. Mateus held Ori and Elvira trapped in a deadly embrace. Then the impossible happened. A foreign knight struck down Mateus with severe swiftness. Christian, yes, but he wielded an infidel's weapon with an ancient ease, as if the iron had chosen him. And that same strength tore the young woman from the river's throat, and held her close to his chest. Alfonso saw Bertine de Laumont fallen, the Hospitallers scattered, the wolf pinned under a firm foot, Nigo bleeding and missing an arm tended by a wounded man. The raven's wings have been clipped, the king thought, holding back the urge to throw him into the water. He descended in long strides. The girl opened her eyes, her father's eyes, when Alfonso brushed the small heart-shaped mark on her neck with a finger. "Your Majesty," she whispered, and the king knew, "She is of my blood." The knight growled, alert, "I will not let her go," and returned his focus to her fading breath in his arms. Time was urgent. Alfonso called to Beltran. "Camilla, now." Then in Aragonese. "I am Alfonso, King of Aragon. She is my sister." "Thank you." The young man did not yield. Alfonso switched to French and saw understanding light up, alongside suspicion. "How do I know I can trust you?" said the knight. "You could have ordered this." Alfonso looked at him with sudden respect. This was no man to bargain with love. "Your doubt is justified. It was my mother who instigated the plot. I only want her well, for the memory of my father." "Who are you? What is she to you?" The young man lowered his eyes to the woman he held. In his silence burned a whole life. "Garin de Montferrant, from Normandy. Zahra is my life." Normandy, thought Alfonso, came from far away for her. "Then let us take her to Sancte Crucis. She is ill." The makeshift litter appeared. Montferrant knelt and laid her down with infinite care. "Don't go." He touched her forehead. "She is too cold." Alfonso looked at those knobby hands and made the sign of the cross. A miracle. They brought cloaks. Montferrant adjusted them with a guardian's gesture. "I will walk by her side." "As you wish," the king nodded. "Quickly. Let's go." Chapter 40. It cannot die. Isarn didn't remember the way to Sancte Crucis, only Zahra's uneven breath, the gentle rise of her chest that anchored his life. "Breathe. Stay." The litter moved forward, and he walked with her inside him. In the infirmary he prayed like never before. He laid the shamshir at his feet, talisman and promise, and handed the alabaster of myrtle to the monks. The scent, sweet and ancient, brought back her body, healing his own. "Come back," he silently begged. Anselm pulled him from the bed. "She can't die," Isarn murmured. "Neither can you if you don't eat," his friend replied firmly. He ate out of obedience, and fell exhausted. Upon waking, a phrase lifted him from the world: "Zahra asks for you." He ran. Alfonso held his sister's hand. Isarn felt a sting of jealousy and hope. He took her other hand and brought it to his lips. "Isarn," she whispered. "You came." "Always," he thought, his voice caught in his throat. "I let you go out of fear," he finally said, barely. "I thought you couldn't love a man like me, and I was wrong." She raised her hand and placed a finger on his lips, stopping him. "Be silent," she murmured. "You're here. That's enough." Her eyes closed with a slight smile, like someone surrendering to sleep, trusting her life. On Isarn's chest, for the first time since the bridge, hope beat again. Meanwhile, Zahra drifted between fever and calm. The heat had overcome the cold, the myrtle guarded her. Opening her eyes, she found Bertine, aged by guilt. "Don't be afraid," he seemed to say with his lowered head. "I come to ask your forgiveness." She remembered the debt and the harm. She was silent. "I forgive," she said at last, touching his face. Honor broken, mended in silence. On the walls, Alfonso spoke with Isarn. The king weighed alliances, the Norman offered only love and loyalty. Give up my inheritance for her? Yes, if she wishes. If Zahra wants it, he said. We will ask her, Alfonso concluded, and the wind carried the decision like a prophecy. Inside, Zahra breathed. Outside, two lineages waited. Between them, a love that could not die. Chapter 41. New Roots. Isarn followed Alfonso to the infirmary, his pulse racing. He saw Bertine leaning over Zahra, and anger rose in him like an ancient tide. If he touched her, there would be no forgiveness. His hand reached for the shamshir, fear flickered in the hospitaler's eyes. No, Isarn, Zahra said, weak but firm. He has come to ask my forgiveness. Alfonso stopped him with a gesture. Isarn stood between them, covered Zahra with his cloak, and steadied her trembling. She will not fall again. Bertine knelt before the king, broken and humble. Alfonso, grave, shared his own guilt and granted him mercy. Then Bertine looked at Isarn. He confessed his mistake and offered an escort once she recovered. Isarn accepted his hand. Honor too can be restored. Alfonso revealed the mark on Zahra's neck. She touched it and called him brother. Isarn felt panic tighten his chest. Will she lose me now? The king spoke of Aragon, protection, and a name reclaimed. Overcoming his fear, Isarn knelt. The choice is yours, Zahra. I love you more than my life. Mayapwa isn't a palace, but with you, it will be a home. Zahra looked at them both, the king of her blood and the man of her heart. She thought of alliances and war, of broken and inherited roots. And she chose without hesitation. I love Isarn. I will not marry another. After a silence, Alfonso offered honor and protection. Isarn, with ancient tenderness, promised new roots wherever she wished. Zahra then understood her destiny, to return to Normandy, to plant a future in Mayapwa. They took each other's hands. The kiss was brief, restrained, true. Alfonso cleared his throat and smiled. Marry here, he said, beside our father's tomb. Zahra sought Isarn's eyes. He nodded. The past was at peace, the future open. Chapter 42. Saint John de la Peña. 15 days were enough for Isarn to declare Zahra fit to depart. Her mind agreed, her body burned. Take her now, his muscles begged, promise her before God. The monks watched them closely, and that distance was a sweet and cruel penance. They settled for whispered promises, words that burned without touching. Zahra, mistress of noble self-control, let a blush and a glance reveal the flame that also lived within her. Isarn felt it and trembled. Only one doubt gnawed at his spirit: will she accept me whole with these twisted hands that have fought so much? Alfonso left for Saint John de la Peña to set the ceremony. When he said goodbye, he confessed to his sister an old relief. Their mother had retired to the convent, the wolf was gone, chained. May the kingdom heal, the king thought, and may my blood find rest. They crossed the Canfranc bridge again, hearts held tight. Bertine and the hospitalers prayed for the fallen. Isarn held Zahra at the very spot where he had torn her from death. She kissed his hand. I never thanked you. Isarn raised his eyes to the clear sky. I was not alone. At Jaca, the cathedral spoke of an absent father and a living legacy. As evening fell, Saint John de la Peña opened like a sacred cavern, stone and silence embracing them. Zahra felt peace and destiny. Here my father will rest, here my future will be born. Alfonso greeted them with a restrained smile, and arranged the wedding at dusk. 2 adjoining cells for the last night apart. Zahra laughed. Isarn, disarmed, returned a spark that stirred his belly. The night was austere. A stolen kiss in the corridor was enough to ignite them. Isarn alone breathed in the cold and the myrtle in his hands. He waited with gratitude. Tomorrow, he thought, the wait becomes a fulfilled promise. And he slept. Isarn's voice. The sheathed sword holds memory. Of hands that chose not to harm, of battles won within, of victories that left no bodies behind. Not all that is sacred shines. Some truths are recognized by the weight they ease. To love is also to learn not to impose, not to conquer what asks to be accompanied. The strength that is not shown does not disappear, it transforms. Whoever has faced their own fragility without fleeing, has already crossed the threshold of honor. True legacy does not seek to perpetuate itself. It simply happens. Perhaps the world does not need more raised swords but more hands capable of sheathing them. The sheathed sword does not sleep. It watches. Zahra's voice. What hurt was also what taught me to touch others without hurting them. What I lacked showed me how to accompany. I did not heal to erase the past, but to let it pass through my voice without controlling it. Now I know that joy is not a reward, it is a responsibility. What is learned asks to be shared not as doctrine but as presence. If something in me has become medicine, it's not because I overcame the wound, but because I stopped fighting it and transformed it into a living gesture. And so, without meaning to, my healing found its form, not in victory but in the humble act of offering what I am. Chapter 43. The body as memory. Zahra tossed and turned on the rough straw mattress. The warm shirt couldn't overcome the dampness of the cell, or the absence of Isarn. Tomorrow, she thought, and the thought burned like a promise. Her body waited for him with an ancient devotion, she longed for him without words, with a faith born from love not fear. She closed her eyes and imagined him approaching, and in that threshold between wakefulness and sleep another image appeared, Isarn's hands whole, steady, as if pain had been erased. If a miracle exists, she told herself, let it be for him. And she decided to pray for it, by the tomb of the father she never knew. At dawn, Friar Bennet de Lair guided them through the monastery, now talkative, proud of every chamber. Zahra listened closely in the ointment room. Healing happens here, she thought. They reached the pantheon of the kings. Alfonso was waiting. I wish to enter alone with my sister, he requested. Zahra hesitated. What if Isarn were left outside the miracle? No need to look, he brushed her elbow. I'll wait for you, he murmured. Go with your brother. My place is to hold you. Before the sarcophagus of Sancho Ramirez, time dissolved. Zahra felt her father's presence vast, like the king praying beside her. She gave thanks for the gifts and the trials, the love she had received and the love that awaited her. But still something was missing, she thought. Isarn was still missing. The air stirred, the flames flickered. Alfonso lifted his head. Zahra clung to the railing. Father, she whispered, help us. An inner voice, not holy, urged her to seek intercession. Alfonso took her hand. Did you feel it? Yes, she said, tears falling. He asked me to turn to a saint. He smiled with relief and tenderness. Then the path continues. Perhaps Santiago awaits us. Zahra nodded. I will walk, she thought, for him, for us, for the legacy that calls us. And the pantheon fell silent, as if granting its blessing. Chapter 44. Asking without a voice. Isarn waited at the chapel's threshold, wearing the Aragonese tunic lent by the king. Accepting it had been a gesture of honor more than of liking. Let the coat of arms be love, he told himself, as the chant in Aragonese rose like an ancient tide and affirmed his destiny. Anselm beside him joked proudly. Isarn smiled without taking his eyes off the aisle. Everything has brought me here, he thought, with a certainty he had never known. Zahra appeared on Alfonso's arm, and the world stopped. It wasn't just the jewel or the veil, it was the inherited dignity, the memory of a bloodline returning to its course. Isarn held his breath. She is mine and not mine, she is free, he told himself, honoring her. She walked forward with lowered eyes, holding in her chest the voice of her father and the promise of a path to come. I am not afraid, she thought, I choose. The ceremony was intimate and ancient. When their hands met, Zahra spun Isarn's thumb in her palm, a small gesture that said home. He felt they fit together, as if the world had been carved for that moment. To protect her without owning her, he vowed. When the dowry arrived, Alfonso handed over a parchment without a word. Zahra smiled, wondering, my brother keeps silences that also love. Isarn bowed his head in gratitude. Then he claimed the kiss due brief contained full of promise. Zahra responded with a calm heart and an attentive body. I desire him and respect him, she thought without contradiction. The chant rose again. 13 and the knights applauded. Isarn and Zahra looked at each other, knowing trials would come. Together they said without words, and that ancient agreement became their first legacy. Chapter 45. Love as refuge. They left the chapel hand in hand, unaware of where they were being led. Zahra felt the quickened pulse in her fingers. Everything changes and yet I remain, she thought. Isarn, attentive to her wonder, held her hand like an anchor. She must not feel alone for a single moment. The double doors opened, and Alfonso appeared, waiting for them in a warm, regal room, unlike the monastery's austerity. The living fire, tapestries and furs, spoke of power without ostentation.
Welcome to my chambers, said the king with a smile that was an embrace.
He seated them beside him, their hands lingered before letting go. Alfonso laughed affectionately. Isarn kissed Zahra's fingers before resting them on his lap, and that small gesture restored their calm. Soon intimacy, he thought, dignity and care, she answered in silence. The banquet flowed with intense flavors and shared memories. Zahra barely tasted, emotion overwhelmed her. Isarn, curious and brave, celebrated the dishes with a frank joy that made her laugh. Among the sweets of the land, Zahra recalled her mother. I belong to more than one world, she thought without sadness. The toast came. Bertin asked for forgiveness, and raised his cup to the union that had endured violence. Anselm spoke of the honor of the Montferrants and Isarn's courage. Zahra felt pride and tenderness at once. Let them see him as I see him, she thought. Laughter lightened the solemnity. Then Alfonso stood. He spoke of losses and the unexpected joy of a sister. Zahra understood the king's sacrifice in letting her choose. Blood also knows how to let go. Isarn wrapped his arm around her, firm and discreet. Wherever you go, remember who you are, Alfonso concluded, toasting the new Montferrants. The warmth of fire and wine thickened the room. The dress weighed on her, the air was scarce. Zahra thought of the waiting night, a worthy bed and the man she had chosen. Isarn, reading her weariness, leaned his head toward her. I will take care of you. And so, between honor and promise, the banquet sealed a legacy just beginning. Chapter 46. The oldest pact. The blow of the chalice shattered the murmur like a cracked bell. Alfonso rose with effort. The wine had loosened his gestures, not his authority. Enough, he said, and the hall obeyed. It is time. Zahra clutched Isarn's arm. Now, she thought, with a sweet vertigo. He held her without looking at her, as if that touch were an ancient oath. I will not let you go, he told himself, and the thought affirmed it more than any word. Amid laughter, applause and jokes that hid their emotion, they were led in a clumsy, solemn procession to the chamber. The priest murmured a blessing in Aragonese. The king, already at the door, raised his hand. Leave them, he ordered. The world can wait. The door closed. Silence fell like a cloak. They remained hand in hand, still dressed, upon the wide bed. Zahra laughed first, a brief, liberating laugh. We are alive, she said, as if she needed to check. And together, Isarn replied. That is enough. She lifted her gaze. The gold circlet sat crooked, her hair undone by the day. This is how I want to remember you, he thought, real, tired, luminous. Isarn carefully removed the circlet, and set it aside. Let me see you, he asked. Without crowns. Zahra inclined her head in acceptance. I trust, she told herself, and the thought held her. When her hair fell free, Isarn breathed in her scent with a reverence that moved her. I have waited, he confessed, almost ashamed. More than I knew. So have I, she replied. But not to flee, to arrive. They spoke little and said what mattered. They recalled nights of restraint, promises murmured in cold corridors, the fear of losing one another. Zahra stepped back and smiled. Dance with me, she said. Not to tempt, to bid farewell to what we were. Isarn hesitated, then nodded. I will learn, he thought. They moved awkwardly, attentive to a rhythm that was not in the music but in their shared breathing. She marked a gesture, he followed. They laughed. Like this, Zahra whispered. This is how joy is inherited. This is how a home is founded, Isarn replied, surprised by his own certainty. When the dance ended, the gesture grew intimate and grave. Isarn spoke her name softly, not as an owner but as an ally. Zahra, he said. Choose me every day. I will choose you every night. She held his gaze, hiding neither the scar nor the tremor. Do not look at me to save me, she thought, look at me to stay. And she said it simply, I choose. The candles breathed. Outside remained war and lineages, inside a beginning without clamor. Crossing that threshold there was no haste but a pact, two wills that recognize one another and give themselves to time with honor and hope. Chapter 47. Choosing each other without fear. An ancient tremor stirred in Zahra, as if the blood remembered before she did. While tending Isarn in Mayapur she had felt that summons, not yet carnal but deep, a fearful curiosity coursing through her body and forcing her to avert her gaze so as not to cross a threshold too soon. I don't know, she had thought then. But I want to learn with you. Now the moment had arrived. Her pulse raced, the air seemed thicker. She knew, through rumors, through silences shared among women, that love also demanded surrender and trust. Yet she was still innocent, trained in the art of suggestion, not in that of consummation. Guide me, she told herself, and that thought became her courage. Isarn sensed her doubt before he heard it. He held her with a calm that did not hide his own vertigo. I do not want to impose fear on you, he thought. I want to deserve you. When Zahra faltered, he smiled with tenderness. I won't hurt you, she whispered, as if asking permission of fate. You won't, he replied. Trust me. I am with you. That act of faith bound them more than any touch. Zahra did not close her eyes, she chose to look, to understand, to accept. This is how what begins is honored, she thought. By naming it without shame. Desire grew like a contained tide. Isarn, attentive to each of her breaths, felt the duty to protect that unrepeatable instant. It isn't haste that I want, he told himself, but truth. He led her to the bed with care, like one laying down a legacy. Do you know what this night asks of us? He asked softly. Zahra nodded, fear and longing entwined. Yes, she thought. And still, I am afraid. At first it will hurt, he warned. Afterward, if you let me, it will be different. She drew a deep breath. I choose, she told herself again, and that was her vow. When the threshold was crossed, the world narrowed to a shared heartbeat. Isarn murmured her name like a promise broken and remade. Zahra tensed, then clung to him, and in that gesture there was pain, yes, but also a new opening, almost sacred. He restrained himself, learning her rhythm. I am not an owner, he thought. I am a guardian. Little by little, the rigidity gave way. Zahra breathed with him, and in that synchrony discovered something unexpected. She was not alone. A brief cry escaped her chest, and Isarn knew there was no turning back. He gave himself to the moment, not with violence, but with a surrender that left him trembling. When it was over, they remained joined, silent. Isarn noticed the imprint of his hand upon her skin, and shivered. My strength must also learn to be just, he thought, gazing at that mark as if it were a vow. Zahra, exhausted and alive, closed her eyes. Now I know, she thought. And I have not been lost. Outside remained lineages and wars. Inside, in the half-light, a more fragile and more truthful legacy was beginning, that of two wills choosing one another with honor. Chapter 48. To stay. Isarn's breathing steadied, and that silence unsettled Zahra. Have I failed, she thought, a sudden stab in her chest. The union had shaken her beyond anything she had imagined, not because of the first pain, now gone, but because of the unexpected fullness, the certainty of having crossed a threshold from which there is no return. Even so, the fear lingered. Have I been enough for him? Isarn drew her gently toward the center of the bed, and gathered himself against her back, enclosing her like one who guards a treasure. Now we belong to one another, he thought, and the idea filled him with a new sense of responsibility. He rested his face against her neck. Now you are mine, Zahra. She hesitated, biting her lip. Say it, she urged herself. If not now, never.
Have I pleased you?
Isarn sat up at once and turned her toward him, surprised.
Pleased me, he whispered.
It has been the truest thing I have ever known. A tear betrayed Zahra. He saw it and held her close, with a sincerity that was almost painful.
I have been a coward, he admitted.
I could have given you more, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? She asked, resting her forehead against his chest, listening to that heart she already felt as her own. He brushed his hand over the center of her belly, respectfully. Of not being worthy of your trust. Zahra lifted her face. If I don't tell him, he will keep doubting. My body called to you, Isarn. I wanted you to touch me. He looked at her for a long moment, as if learning to read her for the first time. She does not recoil from me, he understood. She chooses me. That certainty released something held back in them both, not haste but mutual surrender, a deep attentiveness.
Trust me, he murmured.
Always, she replied, and in saying it she gave herself without reserve. The world narrowed again to shared breaths. Zahra felt her body open to pleasure, not as a rupture but as a recognition. Isarn, watching her, understood that love was also learning, attention, delay. This is greater than desire, he thought. When the tide reached them again, it was like an intimate cataclysm, not violent but total. Zahra clung to him, speaking his name, and Isarn answered with hers, as if by naming each other they were being founded anew. Afterward, in the silence that followed, both knew it was not only a night. Something ancient and fragile had been sealed there, an alliance of bodies and wills, a legacy that began not in blood but in shared trust. Chapter 49. What remains? Isarn awoke with the sweet weight of weariness, and the serene certainty of having crossed a threshold. Zahra was stroking his hair, and in that light gesture he recognized something new. I am not alone in the world. He lifted himself slightly, smiling with happy awkwardness. Forgive me if I'm crushing you, he murmured. She shook her head, playing with his curls. I can hold you, Isarn de Montferrant. The way she spoke his name anchored him. This is what belonging sounds like, he thought. He joked about what to call her now, Zahra or Oriane Elvira. She answered with reflective calm, claiming both names as layers of the same story, the father's lineage, the mother's memory, the woman she had been and the one being born. Before the world I will be Oriane Elvira de Montferrant, she said. But I do not renounce who I have been. Then he replied, for me you will always be Zahra. They laughed. Dawn was just showing when she noticed the dowry parchment. The price of love, Isarn thought as he took it. He read with difficulty, lightly at first, then with a knot in his chest. Something broke. He crumpled the document and tossed it to her. Did you know? The confusion in Zahra's eyes was answer enough. It is not against me, he understood, though the anger still bit. She read gold in abundance, and a condition. A pilgrimage imposed not by faith but by calculation. Alfonso does not trust me, Isarn thought. Nor her. He wants to decide even now. He thinks he can buy me, he said bitterly.
That he can correct you.
Correct me. Zahra remained silent. If I speak I will lose him, she feared. She knew that demand hid another intention, to force him to seek a cure he would never ask for himself. To love him was also to protect his pride. Isarn stormed out in fury, returned in regret. He found her trembling and covered her with the sheets, ashamed of his own harshness. Forgive me, he whispered. My anger is not with you. She cried herself to sleep on his chest. As he held her, Isarn weighed the gold, the time, the road. Is it cowardice to refuse it? Or dignity? To renounce the dowry was possible, to renounce her was not. When Zahra awoke she spoke with gentle firmness, we must go. He felt the blunt blow of that truth. She chooses the risk, he understood. And in doing so she chooses me.
All right, he said at last.
We will go. In that consent there was no defeat but a pact. The road opened before them like an ancient trial, not of miracles but of shared trust. Chapter 50. Pilgrimage. Zahra paced from one end of the room to the other, counting time in short steps. If he hesitates now, I will lose him, she thought, and yet she trusted. Isarn returned with his expression hardened by others' decisions. He wore his gloves as if the world already hurt in his hands. I do not want to owe anything to anyone, burned within him. She saw him and knew the journey had not yet begun.
Ready? He asked, forcing a smile.
Zahra took his hand and did not move. If I keep silent, I betray the road, she told herself. We are going to a holy place, she replied. If we leave in anger, we will not arrive in truth. He tensed his shoulders and then yielded, embracing her. Why do they push me to believe? Forgive me, he murmured. I fear what I cannot control. I fear losing Mayapwa, and I fear you wounded. Zahra held that fear without naming its cause. He will not know that I seek the miracle for him, she decided. We will go with love, she said. That is enough. They crossed the Pyrenean valleys beneath a sky that seemed ancient. In there the separation of sleeping quarters left them with a heavy silence. Zahra handed him the elixir and he accepted it without faith for her. If anything saves me, it will be her care, he thought as he fell asleep. In Pamplona, Alfonso awaited them with a king's hospitality and a brother's watchfulness. Zahra ran into his embrace. Do not anger him now, her eyes pleaded with Isarn. The king offered bed and board, and the promise of a night together broke the roughness. When he mentioned the pilgrimage as a trial, Zahra felt the tremor climb her leg. Isarn steadied her with his hand and raised his voice with the calm learned in war. I will not kneel, but I will go on, he decided. At dawn they set out. Alfonso watched them recede. Zahra thought she was losing him forever. The way opened among humble folk, shells on their chests and naked faith. Isarn observed the misery and the endurance. This journey demands more than it promises, he thought, making sure Zahra ate, drank, rested. She touched the shell in secret. If the saint listens, let it not be too late. Stories of miracles irritated Isarn. Hope can wound too, he feared for her. When a pilgrim asked about his hands, Zahra stopped him with a gesture and helped him mount. Do not let them reduce you to a wound, she told him without words. They slept where they could, hearing frogs and the invisible zithers of the countryside. He dreamed of Mayapwa and the wide bed. She kept watch over his sleep. The road still long was making them one, honor tested, love in the open air, a legacy that asked not for miracles but for fidelity. Chapter 51. Compostela. 10 days later, exhausted and transformed, they reached Santiago. The cathedral was still an open wound of stone, more promise than body, and yet it imposed silence. Isarn looked at it with reluctant respect. I do not believe in miracles, he told himself, but this has weight. Zahra, despite the heat, felt a shiver. Can ancient bones heal the hands I love? She had asked nothing for herself. The scar no longer ruled her fear. What she feared was losing him if she spoke the truth. The forced separation of the way had sharpened to desire and raised walls in Isarn. He brushed against her when he could with care, and she read in his eyes both hunger and doubt. He protects himself so as not to fall, she understood. Inside, the crowd fell to its knees. They wept for having arrived, that was the miracle. Zahra barely touched the column polished by centuries. Isarn only wanted to see her safe. During Mass their names were read first, with a privilege that weighed like guilt. Isarn shot the guide a glare. I hate owing favors, he burned. Zahra took his arm. I know you did not want to come, she whispered, but I am happy to be here with you. He drew her close. I fear you will be hurt. Zahra lifted her gaze to the altar. Now. I did not come for myself. Isarn stiffened. For me then? She nodded and told what she had kept silent. The prayer beside her father's sarcophagus, the simple message, seek a saint, the deduction Alfonso had made. I did not tell you so as not to lose you. The church pressed in. Looks demanded silence. Isarn folded his arms. They pushed me to believe, he defended himself. The rite went on. He moved without a voice. Zahra went alone to communion weeping. On her return the crowd disoriented her, others' piety burned her face. She was about to fall when a firm hand held her. Isarn wrapped her in his arms. I will never let you go, he promised without saying it. Forgive me, he murmured. My pride. The choir gave its blessing. Isarn answered with a hoarse amen that went through her. Zahra kissed his hands. I did this for your good. I love your touch. I love you. He smiled in tears. I know. Let's go. The incense suffocates me. Outside, a royal messenger offered hospitality. Isarn joked to loosen the knot, and offered her his arm. They walked on together, weary and united, knowing that no miracle would be greater than that shared step. Chapter 52. The name that endures. Royal hospitality received them with an ancient decorum, almost grave. At first it pained Isarn to be named consort, then he understood. She does not need to impose herself, he thought, and pride learned another form. Zahra moved forward serene, aware of the gazes and of her own resolve. I have not come to ask for myself. He knew it, even if weariness had dimmed his judgment. The chambers were spacious, the silence watched. The afternoon lingered among fine fabrics and fresh fruit. Isarn looked at her dressed in red and felt the world recover its pulse. We can still begin. Zahra returned an intimate smile. There is no resentment where there is truth. They said little and understood much. Desire, noble and contained, reconciled them with the body and with the promise of belonging. When they closed the door, the world withdrew. There were no words, only the distant murmur of a fine rain and shared breathing. Zahra drew near with a calm resolve, as if she had been walking toward him all her life. Isarn brushed her cheek with reverent fear. Do not break this, he thought. They kissed first with care like those who tread sacred ground, then the kiss grew human, urgent. Hands learned without haste. As they undressed, old fears fell away as well. Skin to skin, Zahra held his face. Do you recognize me? He nodded in silence, always. They loved each other slowly, like a prayer spoken for the first time, then like a tide finding its rhythm. Outside the rain persisted. Inside, faith found a body. She slept. Isarn rose. If I am to ask, let it not be for myself. He crossed the city to the cathedral, still alive with shadows. He touched the worn stone and left his heart there. He saw a father holding an exhausted child, and understood the measure of another's faith. Zahra awoke alone and understood, he has gone. Hope blossomed in her without permission. When he returned, he carried fear and clarity. He sat before her, God ways, he told himself. As night fell, the table called them. Zahra brushed his lips, bold and certain. Isarn held her as one returning from an abyss. Your scar, he whispered, incredulous. She looked at her skin. It was gone. Tears came first.
It was not what I asked for.
Isarn held her. He looked at his hands, the same and different. The miracle chooses, he replied. And my path is you. In that pact older than stone, faith took form. Isarn's reflection. An intimate resonance. Not every sword was forged to be raised. Some exist to remind the bearer that true power knows how to wait. The veiled sword is not renunciation, it is mastery of oneself. We believed strength lay in the steady hand. We learned late that it also dwells in the hand that trembles and yet remains open. There are wounds that do not ask to be closed with glory, but with truth. Lineage is not inherited in blood, but in the decisions made when no one is watching. To veil a sword is an act of faith. It means trusting that not every conflict demands iron, and that silence too can be an oath. The world taught us to wield before we understood. Wisdom arrives when we learn that not everything that can be done should be done. The miracle rarely takes the form we ask for. Sometimes it appears in what we did not dare to request. We are neither saviors nor saved. We are walkers who, upon meeting, remember one another. Faith does not demand greatness, only availability. There are powers that are displayed. Others more ancient are kept. Epilogue. Inner waters. On the way to Normandy, their journey brought them to a city of low bridges and slow water. Night was falling. A wide river cradled the moon like a bowl. Zahra paused. The water remembers, she thought. Isarn looked at her. So do I. They took refuge in an inn by the riverbank. The murmur of the river rose through the open window. They sought each other without haste, no longer urgent or afraid, like two flames that know their home. Isarn traced her back with devotion. To care is to love, he told himself. Zahra rested her forehead against his chest. Belonging does not enclose, it holds. They joined with a tenderness that burned, in rhythm with the water that does not divide but unites. Afterward, they remained in each other's arms. The river continued to flow. Isarn kissed her temple. When we arrive, he said, all that I am will be your keeping. Zahra smiled, with that certainty that needs no promises. Outside, the water carried the vow and bore it intact toward the sea. Seeds in the stone. They returned to Normandy as one returns to an ancient route, fresh horses to Benahanum, the calm sea to Barfleur, and finally the courtyard of Mirepoix opening with a clamor of iron and hooves. Isarn drew a deep breath. I have survived the journey and myself, and Zahra at his side, felt the castle recognize her. This place can also be home. Artaud Odin received them limping, with a smile that hid recent scars. Anselm appeared afterward, a shamshir at his belt. The news spread quickly. The dowry had arrived intact, guarded at risk. An attempted betrayal had been quashed by loyalty. Isarn listened, incredulous. My men, and the weight on his chest eased. Zahra pressed against him, proud. They have chosen well. Then they learned of Bertine, of forges ablaze, of new blades that would bring deterrence and a future. Isarn measured the scope of it, a force that protects without losing sight of what mattered. May it not lose us. It was Zahra who saw Raoul first. Isarn bent his knee, his heart suspended. If this ends, let it be with honor. But Raoul spoke with fraternal irony and firm judgment. He welcomed Zahra to the Montferrant name, praised the castle's discipline, the wealth earned without vileness, the courage proven by love. He enumerated reasons, as one who draws up a definitive record. I want you to be the seigneur, he said at last. Mirepoix will be safe with you, and with her. Isarn bowed his head, grateful to the point of trembling. Zahra embraced him, certain, the legacy continues. You are the desire of my heart, he whispered to her. And the castle, ancient and watchful, seemed to nod. The living legacy. Isarn and Zahra were blessed with 5 children, and each birth rang like an ancient bell resounding again in Mirepoix, affirming the continuity of blood and of the vow. When Isarn held the firstborn in his arms, he thought, may this name carry the paths that saved us, and so he was named Arnaft Valcarlos de Montferrant, as both promise and memory. 2 years later their only daughter arrived, Narina Desiree. Zahra held her to her chest with solemn tenderness. In you rests what must not be broken, and the castle learned a new form of silence in listening to her breath. 3 more sons followed, Raymond Lerant Hali de Mardor and Anfos de Sancheval, names given as offerings to the men, the roads, and the loyalties that had shaped their destiny. Isarn watched them grow with a mix of pride and wonder. May they be stronger than my doubts. And Zahra, vigilant and serene, knew, inheritance is also care. As the years passed, joy became relief. None inherited their father's illness. Isarn gave thanks in silence, without rhetoric, with that quiet faith he had learned late but forever. Zahra took his hand, and in that simple gesture the legacy was sealed, not only a line of descendants but a way of loving that had conquered fear. The end. Author's note. There are journeys that seek not to conquer, but to unlearn. This was in many ways a journey of humility, the slow recognition of human limits within a design far larger than ourselves. For centuries we have mistaken God for his substitutes. We have made idols of strength, of lineage, of prestige, even of suffering. All that is not eternal, yet to which we surrender our faith, ends up governing us. True legacy is not imposed, it is veiled. Like a sheathed sword, not out of fear but out of wisdom. Because not all strength needs to be shown to be real. We are creatures made by love to create. And yet too often we create from lack, from haste, from the wound of feeling insufficient. We confuse survival with destiny, noise with purpose. And in the innermost part a voice insists, I lack nothing, I have forgotten where to look. Faith is not certainty, it is risk. It is walking when there are no guarantees, believing when the world insists on scarcity, betting on the miracle not as exception, but as daily possibility. We have been taught that what we lack must come from outside. But there is an ancient truth, so ancient it was silenced, that reminds us that healing resides within, in prayer, in silence, in the fasting of false promises, in the courage to believe. To believe not in the power I control, but in the one that moves through me. Structures of war, domination, and violence require a lie to sustain themselves, the illusion of separation. That message is inherited, embedded, becomes trauma passed down like an invisible surname. To heal is not to erase the past, but to deactivate its command. By touching the root, the familial, the ancestral, something is released not only in us but beyond us. Because every true creation leaves a trace. Art, music, stories, gestures of love and faith outlive those who gave them life. They keep singing when names have been erased. Perhaps that is the legacy, not the sword raised but the mark that remains. In this story, the miracle is born not from power but from surrender. Not from the invincible hero, but from the human being who accepts their fragility. And in that recognition, simple, trembling, faith finds its form. Thank you for reading and for dreaming with me. I believe with intimate conviction that stories are not invented, they are remembered. They are ancient keys that open what already lives within us, even if it has remained veiled. Thank you for walking this journey by my side. From this corner of the world, I remain with an open heart and imagination ablaze, trusting that each reader will complete the story with their own light. With love and deep gratitude. Anya, Lysander.